PHIUS+2021 from the Chicago Worldwide headquarters. As you can see, would be nice for having moved to the top floor of the Willis Tower by now, but unfortunately that's not the case. That's okay. All right, I want to start the webinar tonight just quickly by giving you a little bit of an overview of the organization again, a little bit of the overview of our standards development process and where we came from and where we are today, and set the stage for three super talented technical people I've been so proud of and have so much enjoyed working with. So before we get to the webinar, just quickly a little bit of context of Fiest work for you guys. So for those of you who do not know me, I'm the executive director and co-founder of the Passive House Institute US. And we had in the last year a little bit of a change within Fiest. Organizational change. We had change in leadership. So I'm very happy to announce that Lisa has joined the exec committee of Fiest as the associate director. Mike Cornelius has left the organization. We're very grateful for his service. He has decided to pursue other career opportunities, and we wish him best of luck with his new career path. And so a little bit of organizational context. We're a nonprofit organization, and you can see here in the slide, our core mission has been from the beginning to address the climate crisis through passive and zero energy ready buildings, also best practices, with having in mind mitigation and also adaptation on the through our optimization of buildings on the path to zero. The Fiest vision, of course, if we're successful with all that, is to make passive buildings mainstream and commonplace in the US and hopefully even beyond its borders. We are expanding. Also, during this somewhat trying year of COVID of 2020, we are very happy to report that the programs are going well. We have been moving along with certifications, with trainings, and we've been also very, very fortunate to find 4 new staff members. We were able to hire 4 new staff members during this challenging time. We have Stephen Reed-Wynn as a new office administrator, Jenny Eber, some of you might have already met, as our Alliance Constituent Coordinator, great Al Mitchell, new technical staff, former student of Walter Grunzig, our president, former president now. We have a new president as well of the board. And Michael Franco finally kicking off our product certification program with a new coordinator as well. So we're looking forward to work with you guys, and you will all interact one way or another with those 4 new folks on the Fiest staff. Programs, products, and services, you are familiar with those. If you have been working with Fiest for a while, just quick recap, building certification, product certification, professional certification to transform the market in the direction of passive building and zero energy buildings. So to the topic of tonight's webinar. Fiest has been in the standards development business for a while now, leading the path to this market transformation from just regular construction to passive building standards. And to facilitate that, we embarked in 2011 on the standards development process that at the time decided to harmonize with other existing programs in the market, such as ResNet. We very quickly realized that without quality assurance, it was very difficult to assure that the buildings actually were going to perform as designed. So that was a very, very important first programmatic step in the direction of a passive building standard. Then in 2012, we further decided to harmonize with best building practices that were already in the market with to connect with building communities that had already been working on zero energy buildings. So we reached out to the Department of Energy Zero Energy Ready Home program and forged an alliance with them. And since then have been requiring all their prerequisites, basically, their requirements as prerequisites to FIUS+, which made our program much, much stronger. And amongst those, of course, the EPA InnoAir Plus program and some of the related requirements there. In 2015, that was the big step. We finally were able to crack the nut of climate-specific and cost-optimized standards. So under a DOE grant, in collaboration with Building Science Corporation, we were able to formulate a methodology to develop climate-specific passive building standards that were optimized for each different climate, but also took into account cost of construction. So big step forward that made passive buildings way more affordable, accessible. They performed better in terms of like overheating and so on and so forth. We fixed a few issues that were inherent to the initial programs that we were working with. In 2018, we further updated the program and came up with a in-between step on the path to zero. Our initial idea behind all the passive building standards was, of course, eventually to get to zero, to eventually align with the 2030 challenge, so on and so forth, to meet the global carbon reduction requirements to mitigate climate change. So 2018 was an important step on that path to zero. In 2020, we initiated, that's a little bit of an in-betweener here. We already felt very solid about what we had in terms of the new climate-specific cost-optimized passive building standard. We initiated a standards development process with ASHRAE together to turn essentially our methodology into an ANSI-approved passive building standard. And that is going well, that work. Hopefully soon we will have a draft out. Once that has been completed, that will make it much easier for jurisdictions to actually adopt the standard into codes and so on and so forth. So now, tonight, James Ortega, Lisa White, and Graham Wright, the FIUS tech brains, will brief you on the most recent work of the tech committee in regards to the PHIUS+2021 standards update. And I just want to very quickly, and with that, I'm going to just stop talking and hand it over to those who have the news to present to you today. The FIUS+ Source Zero plaque, we launched it very quietly in 2012 with not much fanfare on the 20-year anniversary of the Rio de Janeiro Earth Summit. So a little bit of a preview. We are there. What you're going to see, what you're about to see, for me personally, is like really, really gratifying. We're getting to that goal of having passive building, zero energy projects ready and on the ground, and we're committing to that certification. So super proud of the tech committee, super proud of FIUS's technical leadership. Lisa, James, and Graham, take it away.
Thank you, Katrine. I will share my screen, and then I believe Graham is going to start us off. So go ahead, Graham, whenever you are ready.
Right. Okay, so we know what we're talking about. Next slide. Okay.
Yeah, I can take these couple. Yeah, so the first,
we got one.
First two
we got one CEU. That's great. Go ahead.
This will be helpful for people. We'll show this again at the end, but this is the verification code.
Okay, so the elevator speech on what FIUS does, right? It requires design for low heating and cooling. That's in a peak and annual sense. It requires design for low energy use overall, and it requires quality construction. That's what it's trying to do. And so a little bit of background. So what the idea of FIUS+ 2018 is that compared to a historic baseline, we have in terms of overall performance, basically 3 tiers. There was Fiest plus core, which is mostly a conservation target, but then if you added renewables, there were 2 other tiers that you could get to, and the 2018 middle tier there was the idea is we're kind of on a glide path to 0, but yeah, if you want to go all the way to 0 right away, we'll give you a badge for that. Next slide. So for 2021, we decided, you know, we should just go to 0 right away. And so we took out that middle tier. And so that in our minds is kind of the main program. It now would be the source 0 overall. But we decided to go ahead and keep the Fiest plus core idea around. We just sort of don't call it core anymore. It's just kind of regular Fiest plus 2021. And that's so again, the idea there is that we're trying to set a target that you know, you can meet mostly just with conservation measures. And so let's see. Okay, so we had 3 themes for what we wanted to do with Fiest plus 2021. The first of which was was easier to use or to facilitate wider adoption. And the main idea there was that you know, we've been very attached to our design methodology that revolved around energy modeling, but we considered whether that was perhaps that the overhead and the skill required to do that energy modeling was maybe holding us back from wider adoption or from scaling up. And on the theory that having a prescriptive path might allow for more accessibility of the standard and wider adoption, we embarked on the development of that. So it's still, so the idea of that is, yeah, it requires passive measures. It also requires efficiency measures. We're going to go ahead and require electrification. So fossil fuel combustion is equipment could not be installed, but we're not requiring that people do energy modeling, and we're not requiring them to do renewables. And so we're calling it the prescriptive path, but it's actually a bit of a hybrid approach, because within the realm of the envelope, you know, R value, there is, you can do trade-offs there. So there's like a total UA alternative for that. And also when it comes to all the mechanical equipment that would go into a typical residential house, you can do trade-offs within an overall energy budget there as well. And so there are some important scope limitations on this to note. It's available for single family residences, basically, you know, non-transient. But that does apply to both single family detached, duplexes, and townhouses. We also limited the scale of the house. So the ratio of total floor area to total bedrooms cannot be more than 900 square feet. Again, yeah, no fossil fuel combustion equipment could be installed, no indoor pools, no natural draft fireplaces. the fireplaces thing, yeah, that's already prohibited by Indoor Air Plus. And so coming into it, so this is a map of your sort of your three options. So if it's a single family, a duplex, or a townhome, if you're willing to do energy modeling, you can the performance path for PHIUS+2021, formerly called CORE, that is still available. But if you don't want to do the energy modeling, you have this prescriptive option. And if at any point in doing your prescriptive design, you want to go outside of scope, or then yeah, you can fall back and to the performance path and do the model. So if it's anything other than a single family house, then yeah, the performance path is the only way to go, and you have 2 tiers of overall performance that you can get to. I think that's about it for that.
There was one question in the chat about,
oh, yeah?
About the bedroom ratio. Could you speak to that again real quick, Graham?
Yeah, we didn't. So the idea here is that like mansions are out of scope, but we didn't. We talked about this. Like, should we just put an arbitrary limit of square footage or an arbitrary limit of number of bedrooms? And what we came up with for kind of limiting the scale of it was this ratio of floor area to bedrooms. That you couldn't have an enormous house with just like a small number of people in it, is the idea there. Right, so yeah, so yes, quality assurance is still required. So we still have Energy Star, Zero Energy Ready Home, and Indoor Air Plus are all co-requisites or prerequisites for the prescriptive path. We still require the air tightness, and in addition to the final blower door test on the prescriptive path, you will also have to do the preliminary. There's also some requirements for solar protection. The window to wall ratio is limited. All of the moisture risk provisions in our guidebook still apply, as well as the requirement to avoid thermal bridges. So there are a number of requirements that are climate dependent. So it's still a climate specific standard, even though it's prescriptive. And the things that are sensitive to climate, where the requirement is sensitive to climate, are the U values, many things about the fenestration, the solar protection, and the comfort requirements are all applied to the fenestration. The assembly R values also are climate dependent. Ventilation, heat recovery, and even the heating and cooling efficiency is a little bit dependent on climate. Mostly it's like HSPF 10 across the board, but not quite. There are some things that change with the building. The hot water. So in the trade-off path for the overall energy, yeah, there is some dependence on the number of occupants for the hot water allowance, and on square footage for the lighting allowance.
I can jump in here a little bit, Graham.
Go for it.
So yeah, so for the review process, how this affects CPHCs and architects that are going for certification through Fiest. Again, we still do have the performance path, which is either Fiest+2021 or Fiest+2021 Source Zero. And as Graham mentioned, the prescriptive path is the other option. So I'm not going to go through all of these. I'm going to highlight the major differences, but as Graham noted, no energy modeling is required for the prescriptive path. Instead, you will be, PHIUS will be basically reviewing a prescriptive checklist for your building after you've input some information like the location, the square footage of the building, and number of stories. So a little bit of information about that. Additionally, because we don't require energy modeling, the submitter or the person who is involved with the project does not necessarily have to be a CPHC. Any member of the project team technically could submit the project for the prescriptive path. So that's kind of another major difference. And then unlike the performance path where we would typically have 3+ reviews of pre-certification review during the design review, we are very hopeful that the prescriptive path will be kind of a one review and done, because all of the prescriptive requirements are well known to the submitters, and they're very straightforward. So we're looking for more of an idealized process where it's just one round of review and you can confirm with PHIUS that you've submitted everything correctly. There was a question asked about quality assurance in the chat too, and we'll answer that here. So for the on-site review process for final certification, it's very, very similar, very much the same between the performance path and the prescriptive path. So you still need to have your inspection by the third party PHIUS Plus rater or verifier. You still need to submit the same quality assurance workbooks, the checklists, and the photo documentation. The only major difference is that instead of comparing all of this documentation to an energy model, we're now comparing that documentation to the original prescriptive checklist for the project to determine whether or not the project will pass. So that's the major overview of the review process at this point. And I just saw real quick in the chat that, yeah, is the CPHC needed for the prescriptive path? The answer is no. You don't need a CPHC for the prescriptive path. This could be a much more simplified process where an architect could pick up our prescriptive checklist and look at it much like a code checklist or Energy Star's checklist and go through and make sure that they meet all those requirements. Hand it back over to you, Graham.
I want to add to the end of that, a CPHC could still be very helpful for design though. So they're not required by us, but that doesn't mean that that role now has, you know, less value. I just want to make sure that's known.
Right.
Right. Maybe one other note is that, you know, as part of the quality assurance process, you're supposed to get a HERS score and a manual J calculation. So there is still some modeling for that. I'm still on. Okay. All right. So the second theme that we wanted for 2021 was to give people some better design guidance. In the 2018 standard setting study, we went down. The major point of that was to look at some different sizes of buildings. But we only went down to like 1,000 square feet in that study. And so we wanted to look at something closer to a tiny house. So 200 square feet would be a little bit on the large side for a tiny house, but we got at least one submission like that. So we wanted to study these. We also ran into another feature of 2018 was that we wanted to make the targets sensitive to occupant density, you know, that's the heating and cooling targets, because that affects the balance of heating and cooling. But we encountered an ill fit, I guess, to certain types of projects. Basically ones that had not that high of an occupant density, but a very high unit density. So when, yeah, basically when the square foot per person and the square foot per unit became equal, our targets were very difficult to meet, because that really throws off the balance of the internal gains, or yeah, it throws off the overall energy. And that wasn't a condition that we had studied. Or well, we hadn't included it. We actually had data on that. We just hadn't that was usable. We just hadn't, tried to adjust the criteria based on it. So we looked at that. So we reconsidered the curve fits basically to see, whether we could make an adjustment for dwelling unit density, and found that we could for both the overall source energy allowance, and it also affected the space conditioning targets a bit too. So that we included that effect. And we've been working, mainly our QA manager has been working on a quality assurance protocol for non-residential, and that is derived from Energy Star multifamily new construction. So yeah, the tiny house study. So small houses have high envelope to floor area ratios. And so we looked at this one size of building here, which is this is actually one of the, like the ones that was for sale, or used to be like the published designs from the tiny house people. And we studied it at two different occupancies, like one or two people, and at each of those occupancies in 20 different climates. So we ran an additional 40 cases through the cost optimization, and there are like a few less knobs. Like for the other study buildings, we let the optimizer kind of shift the windows around, change the exposure on the different facades, but for this one we just locked it in at the design that they had. And so this is what the new 2021 criteria calculator looks like. So it now asks about your envelope area, your floor area, your units, and your bedrooms. And with that, it can now calculate what your targets are. So yeah, and the climate location. So when it knows 4 things about the building and where it is, it sets your targets for the space conditioning, for the heating and cooling, and also for the overall source energy allowance. Right. Okay. So the new non-residential quality assurance protocol, as I mentioned, it's a lot based on Energy Star multifamily new construction, and therefore is all set up to deal with mixed use projects because it's got all of the unit by unit ventilation and compartmentalization stuff covered, and so we've just kind of extended that to non-residential. And so, yeah, the Fiest verifier is in overall charge of this, the verifier and their QA provider. But the HVAC contractor has responsibility for some of the heating and cooling checklist items, and the builder for the indoor air quality. The third theme is that we wanted to do even more in responding to the climate crisis.
Jump in, Graham.
Go ahead. Yeah, that's Lisa, right? Okay.
Yes,
Yeah,
this is
Lisa's
Lisa.
department. All right.
Not my department, it's just a handoff. Yeah, so I'm
Right.
jumping in to talk about the more climate crisis response. So there's kind of the 4 key categories I'm going to talk about. So we have an updated source energy factor for the grid, the electric grid, at least for the US at this point. We have electric vehicle ready requirements. And then I'll talk about kind of the source energy requirements for PHIUS+2021 and PHIUS+2021 source 0. Next. Okay, so based on much deliberation, we decided to, can't even keep a straight face, do state-by-state source energy factors based on the Electoral College. No, I'm totally kidding. Keep going, James. Okay, I couldn't help myself there. So in reality, we are going to be using a future outlook for the electric grid, which kind of reflects the generation mix, and that's projected in 2050. And this is based on NREL's data of what they call the mid-case scenario for 2050. That's as far as they project out. And we also figured that's about half the lifetime of, or that's about halfway in between the lifetime of the building that we use in our optimization, which is about 70 years. So basically what NREL projects out is the generation mix that we're gonna have. So how much wind, how much solar, how much of different types of fossil fuel based generation, nuclear based. And what we did is we took that data and kind of converted that to a source energy factor. So we have that data for the US, and the source energy factor for electricity that we'll use is 1.73. Canada, we are still looking to find this type of data. We'd like to use a future source energy factor, but if anyone out there has access to this type of data for Canada, we'd like that, or for other countries. We're still kind of in the process of developing that. And kind of the main reason behind this new factor is to put natural gas and electricity on a more level playing field. If you're going to be making decisions about your building now, but the building's going to be around for quite a while, we just felt this was a little more accurate or more reflective of the impact of electricity versus gas on site. Go ahead, James. Okay, so the second thing was electric, I can't say that, EV ready, that's what I say. So we have requirements that have passed for residential buildings based on the number of parking spots. This is for both all of the paths of Fiest, prescriptive performance, doesn't matter. And basically it prescribes the minimum number of EV ready spaces and EV capable, and oops, it looks like the text got cut off, but basically EV ready is kind of like solar ready. There's a designated parking spot, there's conduit that runs to it, and there's space in the electrical box for it. EV capable is a little less. You just have to have the capacity in the electrical panel for it so that you could have the charger there in the future. So neither of these are actually requiring chargers. It's just kind of EV readiness so that we're kind of prepared for that. And we think earlier in the design, it's much easier to facilitate this rather than trying to add this type of thing later on. We're still working on the non-residential requirements. The residential, we just kind of grabbed from the proposed language for the IECC 2021 and aligned with that. That's not going to go through with IECC 2021, but that is the language we're choosing to follow and for residential projects. Go ahead, James. Okay, so then for PHIUS+2021, and we'll call it formally core and try to not confuse you guys with the language too much, but this is our kind of efficiency target. It applies to both new construction and retrofit. So for the residential, the target is now, it scales. As you saw in the criteria calculator, it scales based on the building, so based on the people and the unit density. And it's really supposed to be a conservation target that you can meet with both passive and active efficiency measures, so the envelope and the equipment efficiencies. And it should be attainable on site. You can use on-site PV to meet that target, but it's not required. It shouldn't be needed. And again, you get that target for residential buildings from the criteria calculator. For non-residential, we basically just charted the target down to align with the new source energy factor for electricity in the US. And once we have a new factor for Canada, we'll probably align that target for Canada slightly differently to, we might, it's undecided. This is a draft. So undecided, but most likely it'll align if the numbers are far apart. Right now, they're pretty close together. And then for the PHIUS+2021 level, this is the only level that does not ban combustion on site. So both the prescriptive path and the source zero path ban combustion on site. So we're requiring electrification readiness. So we're not banning combustion, but we are saying you need to be prepared to swap out appliances like a dryer, water heater, or heating equipment with electric equipment. And we will have the full language in the draft proposal that comes out.
Just a slight clarification there. It's only fossil fuel combustion that we're
Oh, did I say
excluding.
natural gas?
You said combustion.
Oh, I said combustion.
That's
yes.
that's living future. Yeah, they ban it all, but yeah, so we would still allow like a wood stove, I guess.
Yep, and that was actually a question.
All right. Yeah.
Thanks, Graham.
I had maybe one more comment on that last one.
Yeah.
So, you know, for residential, for the overall source energy target, you know, we had set that per person, and it's still expressed that way. And we kind of like the idea of like an equal allowance per person, but it now does, it now is sensitive to floor area. So that might seem to like undermine that principle that we espoused. But you know, take heart that it's range limited. You know, you don't just get to completely, you know, buy as much allowance as you want by adding floor area. But we, you know, it does do a favor to those high unit density, like single occupancy studio type designs.
Thanks, Graham. It's a good point. We're not letting off the hook. It's basically applying all the best passive measures and best equipment, not best, but really good equipment. So to meet that target. Okay, so for the source zero, this says it right, no fossil fuel combustion appliances on site. So that is, yeah. And then we slightly aligned our renewable energy offset options, mostly to align with ASHRAE 189.1 and Architecture 2030, which is released kind of offset options for the zero code. So the top row here shows the PHIUS+2018. Basically, we treated on-site renewable energy and off-site renewable energy the same, except for renewable energy certificates. Now we're slightly favoring the on-site renewable energy, and there's a slight derate for off-site renewable energy. So it's not too significant, and then renewable energy certificates are treated the same.
I can take these next ones, Lisa. So going forward, our rollout timeline for PHIUS+2021 starts Monday. We open up everything we're sharing with you guys. We're going to have the 2021 calculator for the performance path is already online. I think Mike Knezovich sent a link in the chat, so please check that out. And then we will also have the prescriptive checklist will be released Monday, as well as a couple other things, which I will tell you in the next slide. But that public period will extend until December 7th, so full month. And then January 1st is when we're intending for the full release of 2021. And then January through June is the overlap period for 2018 and 2021 certification. June 30th is the cutoff day for PHIUS+2018 projects. So if you have a project in the works, but you haven't gotten a contract with Fiest, get it to us by June 30th of 2021. That's your cutoff date. And then starting July 1st of 2021, we are PHIUS+2021 until our next standard. So what to expect next? Right, so we'll release on Monday, the 9th. Everything is going to be posted to our PHIUS+2021 page on the Fiest website. So the comment feedback form will be there. So we'll have a Google form that you'll be able to fill out with the survey. And that has open-ended questions that you can submit your comments back to us. We'll have a summary of the summary of updates document that goes over all of the new changes that we've kind of highlighted in this presentation. And then again, we'll have the prescriptive path checklist and the performance criteria calculator up on Monday is the goal. The prescriptive path checklist is still pending approval by the tech committee. So Monday is maybe a little optimistic, but that's our goal at this point. And then for those of you who missed it the first time around, here is the reminder of the verification code for this presentation. And we can now, I think, jump into the chat and try and catch up on questions. Thank you, Graham and Lisa. Oh, the chat exploded.
Yeah, there's a lot of questions in there. It's hard to keep up. I don't know how far to go back. Okay, so I think I can start back to about 10 minutes ago. Do you foresee the prescriptive checklist will be easy or free to download, or was purchased software still needed? So that will be free. And there'll be kind of a tool on our website that'll help you calculate the project specific requirements. Oh, you're sorry. See, I'm back too far. Monty, on the EV ready, I don't know if EV ready will require a larger transformer or merely wiring. I believe it's just wiring. That's the definition I've seen. We will have that definition out in the draft too. So if you have anyone that has comments on basically anything you've seen, we're open to those and what you know, how you feel things should move forward. How do you determine number of parking spaces? I think you just count to what's allocated toward the building.
Yeah, that's code related for parking spaces usually. If your building is required to have parking by code, a certain percentage of those need to have EV readiness.
Okay. Is Fiest+2021 an actual certification or simply a checklist? So there's two levels, or I guess there's three levels. There's Fiest+2021, Fiest+2021 Source Zero, which are both performance-based and both very similar to everything Fiest has done in the past. And then there's a Fiest+2021 prescriptive, which is the kind of checklist requirement-based. No Fiest energy modeling, but as Graham mentioned, there will be HERS energy modeling because they're all residential. Are stoves included in the ban? No, so the wood stoves are allowed. Embodied carbon, a few people asked about that. So we've discussed kind of hitting some of the lower hanging fruit, such as certain insulation types or refrigerants, and setting a limit on the global warming potential of those products. That is not something we've gotten out of for release or hasn't passed through motions of the tech committee yet, but that doesn't mean it's out of the question. So provide that type of comments in the public comment period. And Jenny mentioned, thanks Jenny, embodied carbon is the topic of this month's Fiest webinar. So Fiest members register in the portal. The conversion dates for the timeline. So what do those mean? Those are contract dates with Fiest. So when you sign a certification contract with Fiest, that's what locks you into certain versions. So the permit date is not relevant to that date. So you really just need to sign the contract. No payment needs to go in place or anything. It's just locking in the contract with Fiest. There's a question about ASHRAE 62.1, but I don't understand the context, so maybe we can come back to that. We asked to get the, oh, you got the code up. Will Fiest 2018 projects be able to upgrade to 2021? Yes. Basically, you can always jump forward. You can't go backwards. You share the code. I heard ASHRAE 62.1 will be required, which means our code minimum ventilation rates will increase. If that aligns with the Energy Star multifamily new construction program, then maybe. But I'm not, we'll have to get back to you, Tom, on that. I guess I'm not sure in what context that is still. All right. Okay,
Yeah,
thank you, David,
see
for
it.
the clarification. Oh, go ahead, Graham.
Yeah, I see the question about is the checklist climate zone based? It's mostly location by location. There are a few things that under the hood are zone by zone, but for things like the window comfort and the window condensation resistance and the assembly R values, those are calculated location specific.
Perfect.
Right, by city.
Yeah,
Right.
the same way
Yeah.
that our calculator works right now.
Right, city by city.
Yeah.
But yeah, like the ventilation recovery efficiency is a zone table under the hood.
Maybe.
Oh, that's right. That's right. We changed that. I'm wrong about that.
I think we
Yeah.
changed that yesterday.
Yeah,
Anyway.
that's correct. Yeah.
So there's a question about CEUs. We'll have to get back to you on that. A decision hasn't been made on that. If a CPHC on prescriptive path would get CEUs, I would like to say yes. It's a gut feeling, but maybe different amounts. The contracting period for offsite renewable energy is still 20 years. Good question on the fee schedule. These are all things we got the technical end of it down, the programmatic items, not quite as sharp yet. So good question on the fee schedule. I don't have a strong feeling about that yet. The cost of prescriptive versus performance. Got a question about an exam. You can email training@fiest.org if you had questions about your training exam. You should receive a response. All right. What updates will there be specific to commercial construction? I know I'm like 30 messages behind now. So we've included the calculation for non-residential projects in the criteria calculator. The other main update is the new quality assurance checklist, improved kind of process there. All right. Graham, do you want to take any of these, or James?
Yeah, I can take a few. So there's a question about affordable multifamilies had trouble hitting renewables in 2018. Do all multifamily projects in 2021 need to be source zero? No. So the PHIUS+2021 replaces the core tier, which was not a zero requirement for source energy. So that tier should still be applicable for any affordable multifamily that has had trouble hitting the 2018 source energy target without renewables. There's also a question on if WFI is going to have an update. Actually, I might defer to Lisa on that one. We probably will, but there have been no major updates made to the software.
Yeah, there's not going to be a lot of, there'll surely be a 2021 mode. It's not in there yet, but really the main modeling update right now is the different source energy factor. So there's not a lot different at this point.
Yep. And there's a question for prescriptive path for multifamily. Basically one thing at a time. We started with single family, and
I'm kind of working on that in the 227P committee. Is where I'm trying to address that, but that's like the soonest that would be out would be like middle of 2022, I think.
Got a question about EV ready requirements for low-income multifamily. Is there an exception if tenants are unlikely to be able to own EVs? Hasn't been discussed, but we have seen some interesting scenarios where there's shared vehicles that are part of the building, which could add a really big asset to the building. So I don't know. We're kind of hoping that this requirement can kind of change things at more of a systematic level or higher level. But that's something to add, I think, in the public comment if you see really big concern for like this waving people away from FIUS, just this one requirement.
as James mentioned, if you're not required to have parking anyway, like if you're a transit-oriented development, then yeah, you're off the hook, which would apply to some low income, I think, but maybe not all.
Thanks, James. For EVs will be the only vehicle.
There's a question on. There's a question on gas heat pump dryers for affordable multifamily. Again, only Fiest plus source zero and the prescriptive path are banning natural gas or fossil fuel combustion. Fiest plus 2021, which is replacing core, still allows fossil fuel combustion appliances.
I've got a question about, oh, go ahead.
All right, I was going to say, yeah, when we introduced the Fiest plus 2018 core, that was basically harking back to the Fiest plus 2018 or Fiest plus 2015 framework for source energy. And so that continues now in Fiest plus 2021 with the additional nuance that now this unit density effect or changes your per person allowance.
There was a question about site electricity storage. There's no new info on that at this time, but we were looking into kind of more refining our on-site storage calculation procedure. We do have one right now. It's not quite as accessible.
Yeah, so as Lisa mentioned, kind of the basic idea of core is that, yeah, you should be able to meet this target just with conservation measures, but as we've always done, you get credit for solar hot water, and as we've done since 2015, you get partial credit for PV if you're using, for the fraction of the PV energy that you're using at the same time that you're generating it, because that's like solar hot water. And if you add a battery, that increases the utilization percentage of that. So you would also get credit for a battery with PV in Fiest plus 2021. We just don't have a really slick calculator for that. We have to, kind of do that by hand right now.
So we've got a handful of questions about like the still using software and kind of the validity or value of that, or the Wi-Fi passive software, sorry. So to be clear, we're assuming our performance path will still be kind of the main path that people choose to take. The prescriptive path is very limited in scope. We do not intend on making a multifamily prescriptive path in the near future or commercial. So the energy modeling part of this is not going away from most buildings. And if you are going to follow prescriptive, again, there's a limited scope with a lot of fairly tight guidelines. So you're not, because you got Wi-Fi training, you're not valuable. Just to make that clear. It's still a very valuable tool, and we're still anticipating a lot, if not most, of our projects go that route.
Yeah, and that the original idea was that when you're setting such an aggressive performance target, you need to give designers flexibility in how they're meeting that, and so therefore an energy calculation needs to be done. So there is still some validity to that, quite a bit of validity to that perspective. We just thought that, yeah, for in this specific arena of single family, we could, boil it down a little.
And I'm seeing a lot of good comments here that would be great to come in through the public feedback too, kind of talking about like maybe is this prescriptive path, the intent was more accessibility and widespread adoption, but then is it pushing too far? So if you think that, you know, we're open to opinions. We're always kind of straddling this fine line of bleeding edge, but also adoptable. So I think we feel pretty strongly about some of the decisions we've made, but yeah, I mean, there is a comment period, and we're open to, you know, hearing what everyone has to say. And there's always this talk about like how gas is cheaper. And I just want to point out, I kind of personally got in that kind of discussion in Chicago, and they ended up installing gas. And what wasn't factored in was the monthly cost to be connected to the gas utility in Chicago, which is like $35. So when you compared improving to the all electric, it paid off in like a year, because they're not paying, you know, $400 a year just to be connected to the gas utility. So there's more to it than just the cost per therm or cost per kilowatt hour. And if, you know, Fiest's vision is to go to zero and decarbonize, and we can't do that with natural gas. So we still have one level that allows it, but the prescriptive path we tightened down a little bit on. You want to read?
Oh, I see one on the difference between Fiest plus source zero and net zero. Graham, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, it's source net zero, and if you're all electric, it's equivalent. So as long as so in the context that you're not allowed to do like any fuel switching, then you know, source zero and site zero are the same, because your on-site renewable is generating electricity. Hope that helps.
We're on the hour. Is there anything else? I mean, so I guess, yeah. So like James mentioned, we'll have the full package out for you next Monday. I think we'll be able to get the attendee list and send kind of a notification to everyone to remind you to get in there, comment. We do value the comments quite a bit. We work with our tech committee, but that's a limited scope. So the more people that can kind of look through what we're proposing and test out our calculator, the better. The criteria calculator, the performance one, is up on our webpage already. The 2021 webpage, as Mike Kernay just linked. So yeah, thank you all for attending.
Thank you.